Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Friend Code. I'm your host, Michael Damiani. This week, I'm joined by Matt Simmons of YoVideoGames.
Hello, everyone.
And something might have happened this past week. Something kind of big.
No, what makes you say that?
Yeah, I feel like every week, someone says that there's going to be potentially something that's like industry changing, and we either think of it in terms of like a new big game announcement that's going to surprise
Yeah.
us, but like for a while now, this kind of like arms race of companies gobbling up other companies. You know, it's been going on since the end of the 360 PS3 Wii era as we entered into HD gaming and prices for the game development costs skyrocketed. And we're at this point now where I think we've now seen the single biggest buy of Microsoft purchasing Activision Blizzard in a $65 million, $68.7 billion
Yeah,
purchase tag.
this was actually truly game changing. This was industry changing. This was not THQ Nordic bought up some formerly small IP or something. No offense to those IPs or anything, but I mean like this is really big, and it was funny because when you think about it, the roots of this company go so far back. There was like Vivendi, Universal, and like they were kind of like slowly gobbling up, developers and small companies and merging themselves, and then they merged with Activision, and then Activision merged with Blizzard, and so it's like it's been this very much like little fish getting eaten by another fish, another fish, another fish, another fish, and then here comes this blue whale of Microsoft. It just gobbles the whole thing up, whole piece.
Uh,
And there's a lot to say about it, and there's been plenty that has been said. I think very specifically, Microsoft buying Activision was very much I'm okay in this case. Activision and Blizzard have become kind of a cesspool. Them getting bought up by Microsoft, to me, in this one instance, is not the worst case scenario. It's not that bad, actually. Like this might be good. Like it actually might lead to a positive. But that being said, a lot of these big mergers, acquisitions, they're not usually that good in the long run because it stifles competition, which can stifle creativity and whatnot. So it's a bit of a, I guess, I think it's a dangerous precedent it can set. But this particular instance was like, even though it is the biggest third party game developer, publisher, getting gobbled up, this time it was kind of a good thing. But man, does it leave some lingering questions for the rest of the game industry, and not just what will show up on on Xbox now, and what IPs might Activision or might Microsoft decide to resurrect. There's a big question, and I think we're getting to it, is what does this mean for the other guys?
yeah, I think because one, we're a little bit late to the party on Friend Code for this because of when we're recording. This was the big news last week. As you mentioned, this has been like kind of talked to death at this point, but it's still an ongoing story. It still has new parts that are coming out. But looking through the lens of Nintendo, what does this mean in terms of the landscape regarding Nintendo? Like, will this even register with Nintendo? I mean, obviously they're going to be aware of it, but like, does this cause Nintendo to do anything differently in the future? And I mean, because there's a bunch of questions. It's like, does Nintendo need to maybe evolve in the wake of this and the changing landscape? Does this change anything with the Microsoft Nintendo relationship that they've been having since the start of the Switch back in 2017? They seem to been have a little bit of a cozy relationship there. Does this change anything, or is it going to still be business as usual as far as what has been done? And specifically for Nintendo, maybe having to adapt to what's going on, because we're seeing some of the other companies, the rumors of Sony trying to go make some adjustments as well based on like the success of some of Microsoft's
Yeah.
policies and practices, such as Game Pass. Maybe we will dive into what Nintendo could do to maybe leverage something similar if they even need to. And that's basically where we want to come at this from. The story is just how it's going to impact Nintendo. And again, the answer could be as simple as long as the Switch keeps chugging along, making these sales and their games keep selling well, maybe they don't. But like that train won't last forever. So eventually Nintendo will have to do something with a successor at some point. And can they really keep it as business as usual at that point? Or like you want to be kind of like proactive sometimes rather than reactive in some of these situations. Like by the time Nintendo gets there, it might like potentially a lot of the options they were thinking about might not be possible for them. Potentially, who knows what the future holds? But yeah, a lot to like think about, Simmons, there with this story.
I think the immediate future is this impacts Nintendo very little. Like just in the immediate future, in the next 2 years, 3 years. Let's like we'll phrase it like that. The immediate future of the next 2 to 3 years, I don't think this affects Nintendo in any way, shape, or form, because Call of Duty's been the only game before this sale. Call of Duty was the only game on the Activision side that was in production. All 10 of their studios were just doing Call of Duty, and Call of Duty hasn't been on a Nintendo platform since I think Ghosts on the Wii U. So they're long. That franchise is long gone. Been not even on Nintendo stuff. And then the Blizzard side is like it's sporadic, right? You get like a Diablo 3. I think the Diablo 2 remastered I think came out on the Switch, and they have Overwatch. Overwatch I think eventually got a port.
Resurrected.
They're all very late, and then there was late ports of Crash trilogy, a late port of Crash 4. I don't even know. Did Crash Team Racing, did that remake end up on the Switch?
I don't remember. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. No, let me just double check for you really quick.
Well, if it did, it probably showed up later.
It did come to Switch. It did come to Switch. Yeah. So, came later.
Yeah, and I mean, but again.
Oh, sorry. No, no, they had simultaneous release. I stand corrected. It came to Switch, PS4, Xbox One on June 21st, 2019.
Well, Crash 4 was definitely a later release on the Switch.
Crash 4 was. Sure. Got that mixed up.
But either way, there were no more Crash games being made. There were no more Spyro games being made. Everything was all Activision at the time prior to the acquisition. They were all in on Call of Duty. So there were no more games Activision was making, period, that were going to show up on the Nintendo console in the foreseeable future. So because it was all Call of Duty. And so with this acquisition, that doesn't change much, if anything at all, on the Activision side. And again, it's kind of sporadic how much it was going to affect on the Blizzard side of things. So immediate future is nothing. But I think there is a sort of, I don't want to say danger, but like it does, I think it eventually does start to become a little tiny bit of an issue later on, because as you said, like right now, Nintendo's riding high. They're on their super success. But Nintendo has done this before, where they've been super successful, and then sometimes they gradually kind of falter. Like the Famicom, huge success. Super Famicom, not as much, but success nonetheless. The N64, only a success in North America. The rest of the world could not care less about that system. It sold like 32 million units hardware-wise, and 25 of that was in North America. So, so they've done these points where like they've kind of like fallen down, and then GameCube sold even less than the N64 lifetime globally. Crazy as that is to think about. But then of course you have the more recently, probably people who are more people who are alive listening to this, I imagine. The Wii to the Wii U, like that was a big fall for them, and they kind of again it same thing with N64 and GameCube, less with the GameCube actually, but like N64 and with the Wii U was Nintendo had to go it alone, and they were kind of on their own. But like they would get some nice third party games here and there, right? Like they would get some not exclusives even, but like they would get some stuff, like even on the GameCube era. I mean, remember there was a time where like EA made a deal where it's like Mario and Luigi and Peach would show up in NBA Streets Volume 3 or SSX 3, and Little Mac would show up in Fight Night. So when you look at something where, hey, here's this big acquisition, if Nintendo ever gets to a point where they're kind of like on the ropes, as it were, with hardware sales or whatnot, this is one less major publisher that they have to like go and make any sort of deal with. You know, like they can't go out and during the Wii U era, this is even more pertinent. There was a remember on one of their E3, the Skylanders thing, on one of their E3 directs, they had a big Skylanders collaboration with a Mario and a Donkey Kong Skylander, a cart vehicle thing or whatever they were doing. And they opened their E3 on that, and that was an Activision game, and that was when the Wii U was doing absolutely terrible. The Wii U never did well, but it was, you know, Nintendo had to kind of go out and start making, you know, deals, start making collaborations, you know, with other big third-party games to just sort of like have something to sell on their system. So it's not just like just Nintendo EPD carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. And here we go. That would no longer be a possibility. Not like, I mean, Skylanders is dead, but which was really funny to read. That was really funny to read in an interview where the old devil himself, Bobby Kotick, was blaming how every other Toys to Life product, saying how it was so much worse and crappier than Skylanders that it killed his beloved Skylanders.
Jeez,
That's what he said in an interview. Not that they didn't choke the market with yearly Skylanders releases.
Yeah, they oversaturated that thing, and it was a Skylanders Superchargers. So it was the E3 2015. It was like like Bowser riding with like a hammer with an armor set, and he had like the clown cart but plain. Donkey Kong had like a big motorcycle type thing. Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, it's cool looking for the time, but yeah, like Skylanders oversaturated themselves.
Right. But at the time, you know, it was still a big thing. But that was a collaboration Nintendo had to go out and do. And now they can't do that. It's just another collaboration off the market now. You know,
so let me ask you this then, because this is like the next question I wanted to ask you about, is because this now falls into Microsoft's hands, it's Microsoft's decision. That was like kind of like the second thing I was getting at. Like, does this change the relationship between Nintendo and Microsoft? Like, that this is one of many options. We just literally just mentioned it, but like, could you see Microsoft being like, you know what, it actually makes sense. Nintendo wants to do some kind of collaboration with the Skylanders for a revival, and we think it might make the most sense on a Nintendo platform. So why don't we go ahead and like let that happen? But like Nintendo, you have to understand we're getting like a big cut of this game. Like you even lending your IP and stuff, they have more leverage now maybe. But I mean, there are other stuff like these games appearing. Like, do we expect Game Pass to really come to Switch at some point now? Like, because that has been rumored forever. Same with like xCloud. Like, do you see any of that holding up, or do you see maybe this kind of changes course a little bit for that partnership?
Well, I think Microsoft is definitely more open to this stuff than any of the other people. You know, like it's definitely going to be, you know, more likely that there could be continued partnerships and deals could happen with Nintendo through Microsoft than if it were Sony that bought Activision. Yeah. But on the other hand, I feel like, okay, yes, Microsoft's been very cool with Nintendo. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. They've only been so cool with them. Like, yeah, they let Minecraft continue, but that feels like kind of like its own like separate thing. But it's mostly like, you can have Ori, and you can have Ori 2, and I guess Cuphead's independent technically. But you know, and they had Banjo and Smash, and Banjo-Kazooie is showing up in the Nintendo Switch Online. But it's not like Microsoft's going way out of its way to like make sure that like anything that's Nintendo-ish can be on Nintendo. It's like we've gotten Banjo-Kazooie, but we've heard nothing about the rest of Rare's N64 catalog, right? We haven't heard about, you know, if Banjo-Tooie, you know, will be on there, or we haven't heard about, you know, them possibly porting any other stuff to Nintendo. Like, I feel if Microsoft, you know, was really all about like maximizing potential, like we'll just put anything we want anywhere, I think it would have happened already. I think they're just very selective about what they give, and I think it can happen. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but like I wouldn't get your hopes up for a lot of Microsoft Nintendo collaboration.
So period
for anyone.
Yeah, like I think sometimes those of us who follow Nintendo news and like have bigger expectations for Microsoft and Nintendo, sometimes we get a little carried away with what the what the possibilities might be there versus what they're really out to achieve. But this partnership kind of is a little bit Phil Spencer kind of like opened the door to this, and now he's in an even like more higher up position within as part of this acquisition. What was it? Became like forget what his promotion just was to. It's like Microsoft Gaming or CEO of Microsoft
CEO
Gaming.
of Gaming, president of Microsoft Gaming,
Yeah.
something like that.
And back in 2020, he was asked, I think by like Game Reactor, about like his philosophy about why they were even pursuing this partnership with Nintendo. And he reiterated that he thought games should be played without limits, and basically said that, I love the fact that games can bridge political lines, geographical lines, socioeconomic lines, and religious lines online. I'm just playing on Xbox Live, and then, if Xbox not my thing, maybe I play on something else. So like, it sounds like, that's a lot of marketing speaking. That doesn't really answer anything, but like, we also have seen like their stuff starting to come to Steam as well. So like, I feel like what I'm trying to get here, without spending too much on like theorizing here, what I get to just cut to the chase here. I think all this just leads to Game Pass. I think it's about the strength of their catalog. I think by giving people samples of their games on other platforms, on anything, wherever you could get this, people get hooked, and then they're like, oh well, if we can get Game Pass on your platform, then we want people in that ecosystem. It feels like almost that like the measurement for success, at least within Microsoft, has not anymore going forward. It isn't going to be so much about consoles moved, about Xbox Series X and S units moved, so much as about Game Pass. And I think getting this is definitely going to boost Game Pass, Activision Blizzard's lineup. Like, it's absolutely, a lot of that stuff is going to Game Pass, but I can see this as like the sowing the seeds of the partnership with Nintendo. It's like, I think their end game is, we would like to maybe be allowed to put Game Pass on Nintendo platforms. Nintendo, if you're okay with it, what do we need to give you? Like, you allow it to sell, what's the cut? And then sometimes they give them these offerings. Like, we'll give you a whole game that's a Switch version of a game, like Ori. Like, if they make a third Ori, it's like, we will actually put that dedicated on Switch, but like, we want Game Pass on there. I mean, I think I feel like Phil Spencer is very open. That's why I've never been more wrong about Microsoft's future after Xbox One and Xbox. After the Xbox One era, I thought Microsoft was going to have to seriously reevaluate. They did. It's just not in the way I thought they would. I thought they were going to maybe retreat and be more cautious. They've gone all in, and like, this is just like, okay, they are here to stay. And I think it's because Phil Spencer is so open to do just taking these risks and being bold. And I this does make me believe that they would potentially be more aggressive with Nintendo in terms of, we want to pursue stuff where it makes sense. Like, I think this, if anything, this means more stuff is going to be happening with Nintendo, because the only reason, Simmons, I think they might retreat from Nintendo is if Nintendo ever became in a position like Sony. Like, I think Sony and Nintendo are such different positions, because Sony is directly competing with Microsoft on so many fronts, where I think Microsoft sees Nintendo is just like another platform that exists that's like adjacent to them, like PCs adjacent to them, like Steam and Epic Game Stores are platforms that are adjacent to them, not necessarily in competition with them.
They may look at the Switch like it's like they look at a mobile, like a cell phone, to them. That might be the way they just kind of view Switch in general. I'm like, well, it's like, here's mobile gaming and here's cell phone gaming. Here's the Switch, which kind of, they just view it as the same way they view like mobile gaming, and then PC stuff, because they are allowing their stuff on Steam. So maybe that's definitely possible. I think the problem is less than Microsoft and more Nintendo, because obviously they can't put Game Pass on the Switch.
If Nintendo says no, yeah.
Well, they can't do it anyways. It would have to all be cloud. It'd have to be an exclusively xCloud version of Game Pass, because Switch can't run.
Oh, I get what you mean, but I mean, Nintendo is supposedly rolling out potentially like the better
I just
online
it's
infrastructure.
probably one of those things where Nintendo just is just weird about it. Like they probably propose it, and Nintendo is probably like, "What?"
Actually, Simmons, yeah, no, that's true. But what if Microsoft? So we're talking about what can Microsoft offer to make it worth Nintendo as well. We've actually suggested this before, just to bring it up again. Maybe Microsoft says we want to work a little bit more with you, Nintendo. Like we want Game Pass to be on your Switch, but we understand it's a bit of a technical hurdle right now. What if we were to work with you and offer our resources for our online infrastructure and like our cloud like systems to give you that? So like your benefit is you could offer your customers and your first party games could use our infrastructure, but you got to get like we need Game Pass on there, and like we're gonna get like the biggest like a big cut of that. Like,
It's something I wish Nintendo would take them up on if it was kind of like, "Hey, we'll let you use our server databases and all our infrastructure, and in return we want an xCloud version of Game Pass on the Switch." If I was Nintendo, I'd take that in a heartbeat, because it's like it's been over 10 years and Nintendo still hasn't figured out online.
yeah,
So
that's very true.
I feel like they're not going to. So for me, it's like, yeah, okay, sure. Like to me, it would be if for me it'd be great, just because it's like, okay, this is easy, cool. And that'd be beneficial to me. But like I can see how the old, old guard businessman, over there in Kyoto might not quite grasp it or understand it or want it. Because that's the thing is, to get a little bit of like an inside politics, from what's been said about the way an NCL operated during Iwata's time and how he really tried to internally restructure the company and everything. It was hard. It was very hard to get Nintendo to do online anything on the DS and then on the Wii era. Apparently, it was a real struggle to convince them that it was the right move to make and that they should have that going. So, even if the deal is sweet, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter how sweet the deal is. Sometimes, like you're talking to brick walls. As far as like people on the other side. So
Yeah, we don't get a lot of we don't get to peek behind that veil very often, so we just go off of like historical stuff. And like as you said, Nintendo does not have a great track record for the past decade with online.
Yeah.
Like I mean, just probably dating back to the beginning of them dabbling online, has just never been that good. And while it makes so much sense for if a competitor were like to reach out and someone who's been working with them, it's like, yeah, we are a competitor, but also we can still have a relationship. We can have a partnership here. And Nintendo's obviously partnered with other companies to do stuff. I mean,
yeah.
And maybe they haven't been like as directly involved as say Microsoft with the same business they're dealing in, but seeing like it's not seeing the bigger pictures like what you worry about. Like would Nintendo be too too close-minded, short-sighted to understand, to see like the great benefit from having that? Or maybe they don't, maybe they do believe that's not in their benefit because they've been doing business the way they've been doing it and they think they're successful because they stick to their guns. You never know.
Oh yeah, I think you're definitely gonna I think the biggest problem really for it, as far as like continuing or maintaining or adding to the any sort of partnership collaboration between Nintendo and Microsoft, is thwarted almost probably entirely by Nintendo's side. Just for any myriad of reasons. Because I think, as you've been pointing out, like I think Phil's open to this. I think Phil's fine with this. And then for people who worry about like, oh, how gameplay would be terrible if it was cloud only versions, and I'm like, because there are cloud only versions of games on the Switch right now, and we've heard varying degrees of reports and reliability.
Yeah.
I can tell you this though, I've used the xCloud, their cloud service for Game Pass on a Series S, and it works. Like, I'm not going to say it's perfect or like you wouldn't notice it ever, but it's like it kind of shockingly works pretty darn well. I've used it for Forza Horizon 5. I've used it for like simple like Death's Door, and I've used it for like more action heavy games. But man, especially if it gets to a game that's not hyper reliant on immediate response timing, like then it really doesn't matter. Like the xCloud really does work. So I'm impressed, but I'm also LA based. So I think mileage is going to definitely vary there. So
Yeah,
um,
that's
it,
that's a valid concern. Yeah.
yeah. So I actually would super welcome having xCloud stuff on Switch. Because I don't know. I've never bought in any of the cloud versions of games on the Switch, which I forget how many there are, but there's more in Japan than there are in America. But like,
The more recent
there's
ones were Hitman 3 was
Hitman
last year
3,
that came out date and date.
Control.
Control was one. I tried Control. For whatever reason, if you did a quality fidelity mode, it ran really poorly. But if you did performance, it actually ran pretty decently. Like sometimes it looked a little like blurry during high action, like when it was trying, like maybe the connection
Yeah,
was a little weird. But like that type of game felt fine. I played for about like an hour, and
yeah.
it was like mostly good. So
And I know they
that's
have
a shooter
cloud versions of all the Kingdom Hearts games.
coming out next month.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah. So
that will be interesting to see. That might cause a little bit more issues for some people with the more
maybe I
action
don't know
heavy. Who knows?
because I don't know where there's the servers are connecting to.
True, like that's such an
So
important thing. Is proximity to a server always means you have like lower ping, you have like
yeah, and
better
that that
latency.
that that is the thing Microsoft brings to the table. That is the advantage of
Yeah, they could have
having a
servers in
deal
a
with
lot of
Microsoft.
places. Yeah,
Exactly. So
it does, yeah. Like I think it's wishful thinking. It would be nice if it happened. It would certainly benefit Nintendo a lot. I think it'd make a lot of Nintendo fans happy if their online infrastructure started to rely more on someone who has expertise in it, like Microsoft. And the trade-off was, all right, well, you're getting Game Pass through through XCloud. That that seems like a win-win. But again, it just heads up to Nintendo. Um, Let me ask you this though, because we talked about how Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard could impact Nintendo, and we gave you this way, but in the short term, it probably, as you said, I kind of agree with you. It might not really do anything, but let's talk about what ifs in terms of Nintendo does have some stronger third-party relationships with other companies, and my question is like, what if this landscape keeps changing where the bigger companies keep gobbling each other up? And how does that affect Nintendo third-party relations if this keeps pace? Because the two biggest ones I'm going to bring up right now, or there's three, but the two ones I think are realistically to consider, Ubisoft is one because they have a pretty strong working relationship with Ubisoft, and then like
do they? Besides the rabbits?
with Rabbids, but also they had whatchamacallit, Breath of the Wild clone that I reviewed. I can't remember the Icarus game.
Oh, nobody even remember. No one remembers Immortals.
Immortals, thank
Phoenix
you. Gosh,
Rising.
because I was like, it's not called Gods and Monsters or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it's not
I mean, he had
Phoenix
Immortals.
Rising. No, nobody even remembers that anymore.
But they have historically supported them. But like, let's get into like Capcom, like a Capcom or a Bandai Namco or Square Enix. Like, I think like
Yeah.
like the Japanese
think
studios are the ones I think that would most, or Sega. Those would start to seriously start. I think those would have a more serious impact on
yeah,
Nintendo's direction. Sorry.
because despite the fact, and it is painful to say this, but despite the fact that the Japanese market for video games, not counting mobile, we're not even counting mobile here, but for video games, Japan takes up less than 10% of the global market share nowadays. And gosh, that hurts to say, but that they still have a huge presence when it comes to development. Like they're still, like you said, powerhouse developers in Japan whose games all just sell better outside the country. But as far as like the actual sales, overall, Japan takes up a tiny number of it. I mean, they're a small country, but like once upon a time, like 20 years ago, they were 50% of the global game market. So,
It
but
shows you how
gaming
rapidly,
gaming
globalization
has,
for it has happened. Yeah.
gaming has exploded. Gaming exploded. So way more people than ever are playing video games. But for Nintendo, though, they never really branched out much from Japan. They've had a few successes, and we'll list them off. Well, one's already kind of gone. There was NST, but they're pretty much
Nintendo Studios.
they're
Yeah.
pretty much defunct at this point, I would imagine. Retro's a good one. Next Level Games, and they're not part of Nintendo, but they've definitely worked with them. Mercury Steam in Spain. So, you've got Vancouver, Austin, and Spain. Kind of, Way Forward's doing the Advance Wars thing, but they're not owned by them either. So, yeah, for the most part, Nintendo kind of keeps everything very much within Japan. And then as far as like big third party games go, yeah, it's again kind of they rely on a lot of Bandai Namco ports a lot of stuff to the Switch. Bandai Namco was the developer behind Smash Brothers Ultimate and Smash 4. And Capcom, brought a lot to the Switch with Monster Hunter, Rise and Stories too. I forgot the name of it.
Yeah,
I'm like, it was so simple. I'm like, it's so simple. How am I forgetting this? Anyways, and of course Square, because Square's had lots of stuff like Octopath and Bravely Default.
Team Asano's like work for
like
that platform.
All their little stuff, I don't want to say little because it makes the game sound unimportant, but it's like they're good games and they are quality titles. But you get what I mean when I say like, okay, little as in I guess smaller budget. Like anything huge budget from Square's kind of not really showing up on the Switch. No Final Fantasy 7 remake, no 15. There was Pocket Edition, I guess. No.
Yeah, and we're getting that FF7 episodic thing supposedly this year too.
Oh yeah, does that come? Did they say that was coming to Switch or not?
Oh, I forgot. It might only be mobile at this point because
might only be mobile.
Yeah, even their pixel remaster stuff hasn't even come to console yet, so who knows?
Right, yeah. So like it's weird. Like Kingdom Hearts is kind of coming to the Switch.
Cloud, yeah. But and they're like, oh, if there's enough demand, maybe we'll give you like a traditional release of the old.
Yeah, I think the only big title you could say is maybe Dragon Quest.
That is a big deal
in Japan.
I mean, it's still 11 still did very well outside of Japan.
It's creeping its way, across, North America.
I think 11, they just have to keep at it. Like 10 was an online one, so they kind of jumped because they started with 9 on 3DS. Sorry, was it 3DS or DS?
9 was 3DS. No, DS. Sorry,
DS. So that was DS. I was like, I think I'm a little too far. Yeah, started with that, but that was like a big craze, and I think a lot of people were starting to get into it if they weren't into Dragon Quest before. And then he had like 10. It was like, whoops, that's online only Japan. Missed out on that MMO. And then 11, comes out of the gates pretty like a lot of marketing.
That was 3DS in Japan as well.
That's where I was getting confused but some of those features got put into the definitive edition, like the map, the 2D map or whatever, like some of the stuff got carried over. But 12, we got 12 in development too. So,
I imagine it'll probably be on the Switch.
I think
it
very least it has to have a Switch version.
Might even be its primary home.
I feel like it has to, like,
because
yes,
the console market's so dried up in Japan. It's kind of like when you look at like Japan, like the December and October, November, December. If you look at like the sales charts for that country, it's pretty much the sun has set on everything but the Switch over there. If you're not mobile,
Dragon 12 is being co-developed by Square Enix, Hexadrive, and Orca. Was a headline from last September. I was like doing some research for that. Hexadrive is involved. They also assisted with Final Fantasy 15, and Nintendo fans might best know that company thanks to its involvement in The Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker HD for Wii U.
Oh yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. Orca, who also helped with the Dragon Quest S Echoes of Elusive Age Definitive Edition, and they also helped Bandai Namco with Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown, which is a really good game.
So these are basically support studios.
We still don't know what platform. There's still speculation as of September. Like, will it come to Switch? To come into multiple platforms? But they're starting to hire up for that. So I know this isn't a Dragon Quest episode, but like just as like if you missed the update late last year, they're ramping up development for that. But that's something. Like, what would happen if like a Microsoft bought Square Enix and now Nintendo's like, you're like this. Nintendo loses Dragon Quest, like that's still and other stuff. That's still kind of a big deal.
If Microsoft bought Square, I feel like they would still do Dragon Quest on Switch in Japan. Like they're not
Okay.
like they
Yes.
like yeah, okay.
But
I
then
argue
do we
that
deal with that thing where it's Switch only in Japan and the rest of the world it's like Xbox PC?
it's possible, but it'd probably just be like Ori. I'm like, okay, look, Japan, you'd get definitely still get Dragon Quest on Switch, but everything else is gonna be over, gonna be exclusive to our Xbox series.
I feel like they would allow it to be on Switch worldwide. Like, but it also come to like I think they'd like
Yeah,
I
I think it would
think
be like
they'd
an
allow it to be
Ori.
multi-platform outside of Japan, but
Yeah.
Japan would be Switch exclusive. I think that's how it realistically
Yeah,
would play
Japan would be
out.
Switch exclusive because like there's just no presence over there. Well, they're trying to chip
Well,
away.
let
But
me okay, yeah, like they have a lot of smaller projects on there, and I think they would probably allow them to still be multi-platform. But like I think honestly, thinking about Square Enix would probably if they the power move for Square Enix would be to keep it off PlayStation, to keep Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts like off PlayStation going
right,
forward. That would be
that's
like so. I don't know how much it really would impact Nintendo because I think the smaller stuff, Microsoft like Team Asano stuff, I think Microsoft and remasters remakes like not like 7 remake, but like old remasters like ActRaiser or the Pixel remasters, I think they would
yeah.
be fine with that stuff being multi-platform.
Well, it's I think it gets really murky because I think with them buying Activision, I think it's very simple. And I said this, I've said this online. I'll say it here too. Here's how I think things are going to go down. I think at the end of this year, Modern Warfare 2,
Oh, for Call of
you
Duty.
know, the rumored Call of Duty for this year is Modern Warfare 2. I think it'll come out. It'll come out on everything. I think by the end of this year, sometime between the end of this year and early next year, the deal will close. They'll finalize it and it'll close. And then maybe at that point, it'll be far enough along that they're just like, they'll have another Call of Duty next year and that'll come out on everything. 2024 rolls around. And then I think Microsoft doesn't release a Call of Duty that year. I think they put the series on it. They give it a break, because it'll be some time since the acquisition is finalized, and Microsoft will have gone in. They'll have some houses to have cleaned, and they'll just be like, you know what, we don't need all of you. We don't need all 10 of you on Call of Duty. We're going to start diversifying out, your workflow. We don't need a Call of Duty every year. I think that's a big thing that's definitely going to happen with the after this acquisition goes through, which again is going to take a couple years. Call of Duty stops being a yearly release. Microsoft doesn't need it. And it'll be better for the franchise. 2025 now. We're that far away. We are that far away now. All of a sudden, Call of Duty is Xbox PC only. Is my prediction. Like people have said, like Call of Duty's too big. Phil said that they're going to honor it. Phil said this, and I'm like, ask Bethesda fans how they feel about that. So,
yeah, I have to imagine like they're saying what they're saying because in the short term they're honoring.
yeah,
They want to keep things as usual. They don't want to stir the pot, but like I think I haven't really been able to comment on this. So this is why we're going a little bit on tangents. This is not Nintendo related, real quick. But I will say I see that as being probably the most likely scenario is that they gotta leverage Call of Duty at some point because
yeah,
why are you spending that? And like unless there's something
they're
we don't
not.
know about, I feel like the bare minimum, it's getting an exclusivity window starting at some point in the future where it's coming to Microsoft PC first, Sony way later, so that
Yeah.
you get an advantage of having, and then it's going to be on Game Pass probably. It's going to be like you can play it on Game Pass right now, or you could wait a year, 6 months a year, and play it on PlayStation when no one's playing it ananymore because
I
you know
could
how
see
Call of Duty cycle
exclusivity
goes.
windows. I could see Windows. I could also just see exclusive. To me, I just see it just going straight up exclusive eventually. Not this year.
Yeah,
Probably not even
possibly.
next. Probably not even next year. But maybe after that.
Let me ask you this, Simmons.
It's $70 billion. They didn't spend it
Exactly.
And people are like, well, they'll make their money back. They want to put it on. Keep the argument. The counter argument is, well, they're going to keep it on PlayStation because they need to make that money back. And my counter argument is to that is, well, no, because if it's not on PlayStation, that means people are not spending money on Sony. And there are millions and millions of people who the only video game they buy at all in the entire span of a year is Call of Duty or just Call of Duty and Madden. Like there are millions of people, they don't play video games. They just play Call of Duty.
I will definitely say this to help kind of like in history kind of like I think backs it up a little bit. I'm looking at both Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. Call of Duty made Xbox 360 king because it was
Yeah.
the place to play it, was on Xbox
Yeah.
360. That switched in the PS4, the Xbox One era, to being on PlayStation. So they could revert, like leveraging Call of Duty will change the tide. It has that power. The only other franchise that has that power, in my opinion, is Grand Theft Auto, because it was a kingmaker for PlayStation 2. You can talk about all the exclusives, all the Final Fantasies, the Metal Gears and stuff, but it was pretty much Madden being on there and being the quote unquote looking the best on PlayStation 2, and Grand Theft Auto. Having Grand Theft Auto on that system was like probably the biggest thing. It like cemented it. You can talk about everything else, but like Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas being on PlayStation 2 is just like huge. Yeah. And if like Microsoft had scored Rockstar somehow, we, you know, especially during Xbox One era, like, oh, Sony stole Call of Duty away. Well, guess what? Microsoft stole Rockstar away. Like, we might have it be coming. We would have come into this generation with a different narrative, but who knows?
And I think that is actually, if you wanted to ask me who do I think does Sony counter both the Bethesda and now the Activision buyout? Does Sony counter that? Does Sony counter that with any of their own buyouts? I'm like, yeah, it's Take-Two.
if they're up for sale, I mean, that's the biggest question.
If Sony can talk them into it, I'm like, yeah, Sony goes after Take-Two.
Let me bring this back around to Nintendo quick, because I want to stay with acquisitions, because we talked a lot about Square Enix, what it might mean if Microsoft did it, but like, I want to talk about like what Nintendo does going forward in terms of do they try and acquire any new studios as a result of this? Because let's put that theoretical out there, because this is what caused them to buy Next Level Games, was that theoretical sale of them to another publisher, and Nintendo losing out on that.
Actually shocked me that Nintendo did this. This is like a story that it got buried, you know, just because I guess it wasn't that big a deal. Like when they announced that they buy it, everyone was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But Nintendo never buys studios.
That's the thing. They very rarely do. Yeah.
Like, they have shown in the past that they would rather do one of two things. They would rather they're fine with the studio just outright dying and going bankrupt, or they're fine if the studio basically like limps along and is completely codependent on their support, on their, you know, whatever, you know, budgets they give. And I'm going to give you a big one right now, and it's Camelot. And Camelot's a small studio, and they've basically done nothing for the past decade or so but make Mario Golf and Mario Tennis, because they're dependent on getting that deal with Nintendo, which is even better for Nintendo, because then they can actually lowball them on budgets, because they're not even owned. Like, they have no bargaining power, because Nintendo can survive just fine without Mario Golf and Tennis, but Camelot needs it way more than Nintendo needs them. So they're fine stringing Camelot along, never buying Camelot, never giving them any sort of job security.
Yeah.
And, you know, and when it goes south, and when say Mario Golf and Tennis just stopped selling completely, would Nintendo pick up Camelot? No, because that's exactly what happened to Mario and Luigi. Alpha Dream, yeah. You know, they started to do remakes of some of the earlier Mario and Luigi games. They stopped selling because the 3DS pretty much died. What did Nintendo do? Buy. Like, oh, that's sad. Whatever.
Yeah, I just don't remember Nintendo acquiring a massive like AAA studio, like anything even remote, not even like Activision Blizzard level, just like anything huge. It's like,
yeah,
it's like their acquisitions generally like follow logic, and they're not the biggest. So like, would Nintendo even consider, like, let me give a hypothetical.
Here's the thing. I think they should, but go ahead.
Yeah, they should. So here's the thing. Let's say they want to make another Smash Brothers, and they want Bandai Namco to be heavily involved because they've proven themselves. In fact, they want them to pretty much take over the development. What if another, like a Microsoft or Sony, is going to buy Bandai Namco? What does Nintendo try and do at that point if they're going to lose an integral studio like that? Or with Sega, like, I mean, they have so many like relationships with Sega and some with Capcom, but like Monster Hunter. Monster is huge for Switch. It's huge for everything. Yeah. But what if the potential of losing Monster Hunter on Switch? Does Nintendo step in at some point? Do you think there would be something that would cause them to step in and be like, we need to get one of these? Because losing, if that ever came to pass, if they lost access to all four of the big Japanese the publishers like that, I think that is a serious issue. Not saying that's going to happen, but
I
like
think I
I
think
think that has to
Sega's
prompt them to act and do something at that point.
I think Sega's the smallest blow, but I think Capcom, Capcom, Namco, and Square. Any one of those three, I think, is a huge blow to them if one of them gets absorbed by Sony or Microsoft. Definitely Sony. If Sony absorbs one of them, that's really bad news for Nintendo. Capcom is probably second lowest on the danger meter, and I say this because we saw the Capcom leaks,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
it doesn't look like there's much coming out for the Switch beyond this last year with Monster Hunter, Rise, leading to Sunbreak expansion and Stories 2. It doesn't look like Capcom actually has a ton of Switch support actually planned in the next few years. So if in the immediate term someone gobbled up Capcom, maybe not be as big a deal for Nintendo as you would think, just because like from that terrible leak, it kind of just looks like, well, it doesn't look like they had a lot coming their way anyways. But that leads back to Namco and to Square, and that's bad news, I think, for Nintendo. Really bad news if Dragon Quest, goes away from Nintendo. If Sony buys it, that's really bad.
Yeah,
for
Sony will
Nintendo.
not allow that to be on Nintendo. There will be no chance Dragon Quest comes to Nintendo.
Yeah. So Sony's just going to be like, you will never. We'll just look at them and just be like,
they don't care if their console's
you will never
not selling
see
very
this
well.
logo.
I mean,
this
guy's doing
will
better.
Never see our logo, on your system again. So that's actually bad news for Nintendo. Because Nintendo again, like they as everyone says, they march to the beat of their own drum, but they do make deals and partnerships with a lot of Japanese publisher developers still. So part of me really thinks that, I think, because right now it looks like Sony's plan has been gobble up developers, and Microsoft is like buy the publisher wholesale, get the IPs as well. And Nintendo's basically been like, we're not going to do anything. Excuse me. But the one kind of lone exception was Next Level Games, because Next Level Games was like, they openly put themselves on the market and said, we're looking to sell ourselves. And I think Nintendo looked at the 9 million plus sales of Luigi's Mansion 3 and went, yeah, no, I think we really need to keep this. We need to keep them around. So that's happening. But like, yeah, you would think that maybe after Dread, they'd want to buy Mercury Steam. But what a lot of people don't really realize is there's actually a lot of drama and workplace accusations in Spain coming out of the Spanish press for Mercury Steam. It's kind of tale as old as time. We've definitely heard a lot about it from other companies like Ubisoft and Activision. And it's like, sounds like it's actually kind of there's some there's some accusations for Mercury Steam that kind of never really got much traction in English because they were only published on Spanish news sites. So I could see Nintendo not buying Mercury Steam just because they would definitely be aware of that internally and being like, I don't think we want to deal with that. So
yeah, let me ask you this, because I have a list of affiliate companies for Nintendo. These are companies that Nintendo either has major or minor affiliate status with, and are either potentially under significantly owned state. Nintendo owns a significant stake of these companies. So any one of these companies is not 100% owned by Nintendo. They might have majority stake in them, but like they'd have to like buy the rest. So do any of these? You've already talked about Camelot. That's the very first one. You've already talked about Camelot. You said you'd probably let it die.
Oh, they would.
Creatures is the next one. Mother series, Pokemon trading card game, Pokemon Ranger, Poke Park, Detective Pikachu. Do you see? What would you say on that? Like, you just give me a simple like yes, buy, or no, they let it die.
If Sony or Microsoft were threatening to buy Creatures or Game Freak, Nintendo would gobble them up.
Cygames, Dragalia Lost. I mean, they're a little bit big.
I don't know if Nintendo has the money.
Yeah, I don't think that's a little bit different. That's a little bit of a different beast. DNA.
I feel like Nintendo's love affair with DNA is kind of already over.
I feel like that's it too. All right, here's the biggest one. This is the biggest one. Game Freak.
Yeah, if Game Freak, because they've tried to do their own stuff. They have released independent releases and they've gone nowhere and they've done terribly. What was that? They also had that My Town game or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Woof. I do think Creatures and Game Freak is one company, or two companies, I should say, where if they were under threat of being gobbled up by someone else, Nintendo might swoop in and counteroffer if push came to shove. But I think because their relationship's so tight knit right now, anyways, I think Nintendo's probably not worried about it.
Yeah, there
But
might be a contractual thing where they get first option if that ever came to. I don't know the business legal
yeah,
contract terms behind these ownerships, just other than they have majority stake or affiliate. What about Genius Sonority? But they haven't done something in a while,
oh,
I
they
guess.
let they let him die.
Good Feel. It's been a little while. Yoshi's Crafted World was the last
I
one.
think I don't think they'd buy Good Feel either. I think they'd let Good Feel die.
All right.
Good Feel feels just like Skip to me.
This is the first one I think they would outright buy. Grezzo.
Maybe. I'm
Maybe,
50-50
huh?
I'm 50-50 on Grezzo. They don't need Grezzo. And Grezzo on their own, like as they've proven with Ever Oasis, doesn't equate to much.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm real 50-50 on Grezzo. Like, oh, but the Zelda games are so successful. Then I'm like, yeah, because they're Zelda. Like, you take away Zelda from Grezzo, and what is Grezzo?
Yeah, I mean, I see some people call them like the Nintendo's Blue Point or whatever, but I mean, not literally like as like doing the same work as Blue Point in terms of
Yeah,
like high definition remakes, but I mean that's kind of like their wheelhouse over there.
I'm very 50-50 on if they buy
Right.
Grezzo.
This one seems like it's pretty safe anyway, but I think a lot of people don't realize that HAL Laboratory is not fully owned by
Not
Nintendo.
owned, not
Yeah.
fully owned, but if they're in no danger of going
Yeah,
anywhere.
this one's a pretty safe thing. It's like
This
just
is like
a
if
technicality bringing it up.
yeah, if push came to shove, Nintendo would buy them all out, buy them completely.
Oh yeah,
Yes, but
absolutely.
that's just not going to happen.
I don't know about this one's been a while. Indies Zero. It was they done Electroplankton. Sushi Striker: The Way of Sushido was the most recent one on Switch back in.
Oh, they'd let them.
Yeah.
They Nintendo would let them die if it was like, oh, we're going bankrupt. Can you buy us Nintendo? No.
Yeah. This next one's another same category as HAL. Intelligent Systems. Fire Emblem, Paper Mario.
Yeah.
They also very integral to hardware.
They are.
to stuff. So like I think HAL and Intelligent Systems, they would never let them go. Like
They wouldn't let them go, but I don't think they're in any danger of being poached either.
No,
like,
I don't think so either.
Like they wouldn't leave Nintendo's side anyways, but if push came to shove, Nintendo would gobble them up. Would 100%.
Here's a fun one because I don't know, like this person in their studio could go somewhere else potentially. Sora with Sakurai.
It's a two-person
I know,
studio.
but do you think Sakurai would ever leave and go to another?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Sakurai just probably wouldn't sell. Period. Like he would want to be independent.
No, I meant like I think it'd more be a talent poach. It'd be like Sakurai, would you like to come work over here? And
Yeah.
poach him away. But maybe Nintendo could try like offer like we want you. What position do you want at Nintendo? It's like I don't know.
Yeah.
I could see that's a weird one too. And the last one is Van Pool. I mean, they haven't done some like Sticker Store. I think it was like their last game, and they did all those Tingle games. So I don't really know if they're gonna
Vanpool?
Yeah, they're like way freaking. I think they're just too obscure at this point. Dylan's Rolling Western might be more of our audience might know for them back in a generation or two ago.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well that's who they
Yeah.
have working relationships with right now. And of course, like I said, also Mercury Steam as well. But like, yeah, I think we got to start looking about like who should developer or publishers, who should Nintendo start looking into if things get any worse or any scarier, I should say, as far as these mergers acquisitions go. I think it's I think we have a real question of like who should Nintendo go after?
I mean, I swear the best answer for them. I know everyone keeps saying it, but like personally, the one that makes the most sense to me of all four, because so much of their library would work with the Switch period in some fashion, because they aren't cutting edge technology anymore, is Sega.
Yeah.
Because that would include Atlas as well. I think getting Atlas's entire lineup exclusive to Switch would be the best get for them, and it would hurt Sony a lot because Sony was enjoying the Persona exclusivity for the mainline games.
That would really screw over a lot of Sony fans.
I mean, it
If
would, but like you also get Sonic, you get Yakuza, you get all their
yeah,
like the rich history of games that are now their IPs are now owned by Nintendo. So Sega and
it,
Atlas are now
it would be a tricky proposition because you have to deal with Sega Sammy
that
Holdings.
is the
Um,
big wrench in the works
so
potentially. Yeah,
yeah, it'd be a really tricky maneuver, but like Sega Sammy Holdings wouldn't is probably going to be one of those like we're not going to sell to Microsoft, you know, because of foreign influence or whatever. Like we'll maybe sell to Sony, probably more likely sell to Nintendo, despite the fact that Sega started in Hawaii, but whatever, that's ancient history. But yeah, I think for Nintendo, for everything they do, for everything they, I think their biggest get would be Sega, and then to maybe either start leveraging their IPs or better yet, I think it would be in Nintendo's best interest to open up a new studio, like get a building somewhere in Tokyo that's huge, full of different studios, and sort of like bring back what Sega used to have, where they used to have a diverse collection of internal studios before Sega Sammy merged and erased all of that. But it used to be a bunch of different people like Overworks and Hitmaker and you know, Sega Rosso and you know, all these different uh development teams, you know, within Sega that used to have their own unique logos and
yeah,
stuff, and bring something like that back and just sort of like have them go in, and because and for Sega in particular, not even talking about the Atlas side of things, I think Sega would work well as someone a little more closer to Hal's level of budget and size and scope, where like, okay, let's bring Sega back, but like we don't really have to go beyond say PS2 GameCube era as far as, you know, budget and graphical fidelity goes. It could be Dreamcast, it could be even, you know, you could do what, you know, Sonic Mania, Streets of Rage 4, you know, even that Panzer Dragoon remake, which, you know, done in Europe. Like you could just go smaller scale, like, hey, make new games, but you know, they don't have to be these massive $50 million production budget, you know, things like some we can still have some of those, but like Sega was so well known for their arcade style of gameplay of just pick up and play and just really fun, really, you know, good, quick stuff. Like they had King of 3D Fighters, King of Racing Games, you know, so many like strategy RPGs was a big thing for them too, you know. But just yeah, I think it'd be beat 'em ups and stuff. Like it'd be fine if Nintendo got Sega and then just started to like rebuild them internally and just say like, hey, make a bunch of cool, smaller, you know, budget stuff, because don't worry about, you know, you don't have to worry about like the sales anymore or whatever. Like I think that would be the best thing to do. And then of course you let Yakuza team do whatever it wants to do, because that's kind of like your high budget stuff. And
yeah, that would be like the
and in Atlas, of course, you kind of can just leave them to their own devices or whatever. I think they'll be fine with that. Atlas is a weird one because, like, you know, they have so much, they have a huge and growing fandom, but it's like they're very slow about getting their titles out. I don't think we don't even have a clue as to when their next Persona game is, and
nope.
it took
Persona
forever.
takes forever.
Well, it took forever. It took forever to get Shin Megami Tensei 5 out.
Yeah, so
that took forever. So
that's something. Yeah, that's something that would be interesting to see if that like they need more.
but
like,
yeah,
if
like
any more resources would help. I do
if
know.
there,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying, if there's any publisher I think would be sensible for Nintendo to gobble up, if the game industry just devolves in the next year or two into just basically everyone buying up everyone else, and it's just first party and indies only, that's it. To me, and people will say, well, that will never happen. I'm like, Activision Blizzard just got bought. Everything's on the table now. I feel like nothing is sacred.
Exactly. Like it means not yeah. Like anything is pretty much possible, and like even from
possible,
unlikely players. I mean,
Yeah,
Microsoft and Sony are not the only players. I mean, you have Tencent potentially who could like swoop in and try and like buy up something. There's
or Google or
yeah,
Amazon try to jump in.
Meta, Facebook Meta, whatever the heck you want to call them, like Amazon, like who knows what? I mean, even Netflix. I mean, Netflix could just try and swoop in and try and
Yeah.
buy a
So
studio or something. Like,
if everything starts getting gobbled up and there's really nothing, like if it's a a feeding frenzy, I'm like, okay, if you're Nintendo, I think you buy Sega. Um,
yeah, it just makes so much sense to me.
and if you're Sony or Nintendo, you absolutely try to put an offer out there to Square, like even if you don't get it.
Yeah, the thing with
The
Square is
the
their high-end stuff will not fly on Switch, and I know they have a lot of big projects that they
sure,
like.
sure,
So I would see them possibly even
but I mean,
taking less money
if
to go on PlayStation just to ensure that the diversity of their lineups could be ensured, that they could
but
have
the
high-end
other
games.
problem there is if it comes to a thing where everyone's trying to grab the last biscuit off the plate, right? Microsoft's going to outbid everybody.
I mean,
Like
I mean, they have a lot of money, but like, it's not infinite money. Eventually, like, you can,
it's more than Sony has.
and also, while Activision Blizzard, I don't think crosses probably, and I'm not the legal expert here, I don't think it crosses the threshold of approaching monopoly. But as there are fewer and fewer scraps left on the table, depending how many players are left, it is going to start approaching that up, where people are going to be like a little bit more scrutiny at who's buying who and being like, we might need to reevaluate this. Obviously, when it comes to movie studios and stuff, it's been pretty much a free for all. Like, everything has like been allowed so far, but the talk has grown louder, especially after like all the Disney acquisitions, about how much more can Disney really buy before we start getting close to that threshold, that potential threshold where they're too big. That's something
Yeah.
they might have crossed a line here. So
It
yeah,
doesn't, you know what? It's weird. It doesn't seem to ever matter. It never
yeah.
seems to matter. Like no matter how much of a monopoly
As
things
long as
seem to
there's
be,
two people remaining, it's not a monopoly because there's two of them, right? It doesn't
yeah,
matter.
they always seem to be some
It's
way to.
monopoly's one.
They always these big corporations always find a way to worm their way out of this antitrust stuff.
Oh,
So
they got the money and the lawyers.
yeah,
Again,
yeah.
again,
I,
Simmons.
I
Though,
almost you think legally this would create a problem, but it just never seems
yeah,
to.
it's not at that point yet, I think, for sure. But again, Sega makes so much sense because of all the things you said and how much Sega can potentially help with Nintendo's own stuff. And how many times have we asked for them
Yeah,
to make a new F-Zero? It's like Sega's always
yeah.
the one who comes up.
Well,
Having the Sakura Wars and the Valkyria team being able to join up with maybe intelligence systems to do like more SRPG type games, like churn those out a little bit faster. I mean, that would bring all their expertise together. I don't know if this interests you at all because I'm not familiar enough with their history, but any of the PSO people with potentially teaming up with Monolith Soft, I don't know, like to do some kind of like online game project or something like that because the two of them match up. I don't know if
have the
that.
P have the PSO team handle the Xenoblade export.
Okay,
It's not happening otherwise.
there you go. That would be a use for them. And then like, yeah, potential of like a amazing 3D Sonic. I mean, we have Sonic Frontier. The jury's still going to be out on that because we haven't seen that game yet. But if it
I
ends up
don't
not being
have
spectacular,
whatever happens to
like
that.
Sonic games, because obviously they're not going back to the team that make Colors anytime, or not Colors, Mania anytime soon. I think the next best people possibly equipped to handle that are the platform masters at Nintendo. And
Yeah.
even Nintendo could possibly leverage their relationships to reach out to some smaller studios. Like, imagine like a Way Forward or Yacht Club Games, sorry, being able to work with like Sonic potentially. It's like, hey, would you like to make a 2D Sonic? And
Yeah, there was a big rumor that a bunch of people from Sonic Team got poached by Nintendo Tokyo before
oh,
Forces came out. And I've heard it a lot where like a lot of people said the reason Forces came out the way it did was because most of the team was poached by Nintendo Tokyo
oh, interesting. I didn't hear about
and
this.
went to work on Mario Odyssey.
Oh,
Um, so
honestly, turned
I've
out
heard
pretty
that.
well.
Yeah, see, that's what I've heard is like the problem with Sonic Team currently is that Nintendo Tokyo took all their talent, and I'm like, really? Okay.
I mean, but like, let's be honest. Whenever we hear about Mario and Sonic, we don't want to hear about Olympic Games anymore. We want to see a 3D
Yeah,
platformer,
yeah,
right? Like, this can make it happen. Like, I think a lot of
yeah,
good could come for this, and it makes the most sense. But we could sit
yeah.
here.
And Japan's very still big in its homeland, at least from when I was in Japan right before the apocalypse hit. So Sega was still a big presence there. So, just on the street, and just mind share and whatever. So it's like, yeah, like there's still a big presence in Japan, which I think Nintendo would like.
Yeah.
And I think that's that. Square's going to be like the I don't know, not a wishbone, but it'll be like a three pronged something or other where everyone's going to be trying to pull it apart if it came down to it, where it's like everyone's trying to outbid
Yeah, I
for
think
them.
Microsoft and Sony would be in a pretty big bidding war for Square Enix because I think that Final Fantasy potential, just like it has so much potential, and it's such a big
Yeah.
franchise that alone for high
It,
end for like another AAA franchise
well,
plus
the interesting thing a lot of people probably don't
their
know though
Western
is like
stuff.
Namco is probably one of, if not the most expensive Japanese publisher.
Oh,
Like, because the corporation in general of Bandai Namco is actually much bigger than Square, and much bigger than Capcom and Sega. So as far as that goes, so if like you were to ever try to buy Namco, that would be way more money than SquareSoft
that's
and
why I think it's
Capcom
not
and
very
Sega.
likely to happen. And like the thing I postulated to you before, I think Nintendo would let Bandai go and find it, like figure out another way to forward with Smash Brothers if they did it before. Like it
Yeah,
hasn't
and
always.
and and
I mean,
Smash is,
Hal helped with it before in the past. So
yeah. Well, Smash is so far, they're so far away from even
yeah, and who knows what
deciding
they're
what to
doing? Yeah,
do.
exactly. They got plenty of time. So
Yeah,
let
yeah.
me ask you this. We've been talking a lot about acquisitions theoretically for a while, and we could keep going for forever on this. It's a lot of fun. The last thing I want to talk about, though, Simmons, is the direction all this seems to be leaning to, especially for Microsoft, and the rumors from Sony is that the focus on library on like
Mhm.
Xbox, Microsoft has Game Pass. Sony seems to be having its own version of that coming out pretty soon, apparently to be unveiled possibly next month. Apparently,
Yeah.
it might even be unveiled.
Yeah, the
So,
Spartacus rumor.
Spartacus. What about a Nintendo Game Pass? Is this something Nintendo needs to
Yeah.
seriously start considering at some
Well,
point?
they already have it, and it's called the Nintendo Switch Online,
Okay,
and
a real Game Pass.
it functions primarily the same way. You sign up for Nintendo's online service, you get access to a bunch of Nintendo and Super Nintendo games, and if you go the premium, you get N64 and Genesis for some reason. Um, I don't understand that. The Genesis one still confuses me. This is why you should buy Sega, so you can have all the Genesis stuff. You don't have to charge a premium for it. But yeah, this is where I feel Nintendo does have it, but it's going to eventually start being noticeable how much more of a value, because I get it when you're in, because we're talking on a Nintendo
Yeah.
show right here, and there's a lot of people who are also probably majority I own a Switch and a PC, or a Switch and a PlayStation, or whatever. I'm a recent Series S Xbox owner, and my God, is the convenience of Game Pass outstanding? Like, the convenience and just the simplicity of it is unbelievable, unbelievable. It is amazing. And then knowing that the first party stuff is day one Game Pass, like, wow. Like, it's, you don't know what you don't know what you got till it's gone, but you don't know what you don't have until you have it either. It can reverse is true. So let's say Spartacus is Game Pass and everything, right? All but name for Sony. All of a sudden now, Sony people are going to be getting a good taste of that value that Xbox has. That's when it starts coming back to Nintendo, going like, so what value does Nintendo's $50 a year, even though it still would probably be cheaper? You break that, I don't know what you break down $50. I mean, it's what, $10, less than $10 a month or something. But like, at the end of the day, Nintendo Switch Online expansion pass is going to really start looking like a crappy deal. Like, if Sony Spartacus is as good a deal and a good a price as the Xbox Game Pass. I'm not saying this because I'm a big shill for Microsoft or anything. I'm just saying, like, man, when you have Game Pass and you see the number of games on there that are just immediately downloadable or immediately playable on their xCloud, and it's cost you $1 for the first month and 15, for the ultimate version, which is PC and Xbox. It's
And
like,
EA Play.
and EA, and
Yeah,
it
it's included
includes
with
the
that.
EA Origins. So it's like when you see how much further your dollar goes on Game Pass, and if Sony matches that with their thing, their rumored thing, that is really going to put, I think, Nintendo in a bad light, as far as like value proposition goes, because it's basically going to go back to being, it's going to look like when Netflix took off and people were still sitting there like, well, I have my Best Buy membership. Well, what, you still go out and buy DVDs for your movies? It's going to start looking like that, like, where Nintendo's sitting there like, well, we have 25, 30-year-old games.
Yeah.
I'm like, and then like Sony and Microsoft, well, you can get brand new games day one with our online service. Like,
Nintendo thing is just not exciting, I think, is its biggest problem. I mean, I don't know if they were
and
intending it to be,
and
but
it's such a drip feed of content. Like,
it's such a different
one game
approach.
a month, two games a month.
It's not even trying to do the same thing. I want to know what Sparkus's price, like what Sony's price plans are, because because I think they value their first party a little bit more than Microsoft. I think it's gonna be a little bit more expensive, but they might try and undercut just to be a better value.
Well, I feel like Sony's not going to offer day one new releases.
Oh, so you think it's gonna be a little bit modified? Well, this is all good points, because I want to know how this plays out, because it's going to help me better guess what Nintendo might do, because I don't think they're going to literally do what Microsoft, because Microsoft's plan comes out to be $180 a year if you do like the $15 a month. You do get your first month for $1 whenever you sign up, but like generally it's going to be $180 a year. So will Sony's be more expensive, or as expensive, or less expensive than that? And what does Sony's details include?
Yeah. Well, Sony doesn't have a major PC store presence, so.
Well, they are starting to change that.
I mean, kind of, but I mean, like, you can do Game Pass for $10, but I don't think it includes.
You can do the $10
Live.
ones. Yeah, you can do the $10 ones on console or PC. The console one does not include EA Play. Or sorry, the PC one does not include EA Play or EA Access.
Yeah.
Only
so
the console one does.
Some give or take on that, but it's like, so yes, Nintendo is still significantly cheaper, but.
Oh, the PC does include EA Play. I'm sorry. The console one does not. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I had it backwards.
Well, anyways, like, my point is that, like, yes, Nintendo will still be cheaper, but what do you get right now? You get a very curated selection of Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and N64 and Genesis, whatever.
Yeah, and you got Animal Crossing DLC, and that's it.
That's
like,
it.
Yeah,
if you have an NES or a SNES Classic, this thing is worthless.
I totally get that. My thing is, I'm not full. Like, yeah, I just see Nintendo being so resistant. Like, I want Nintendo to do a Game Pass thing eventually, but like they seem like they're gonna be so resistant to it. And when they do it, I absolutely think if they ever do it, it's gonna be the most expensive for the least amount of stuff.
They won't be resistant to it, and I'll tell you why. Okay. I think they won't, because it seems to be the biggest and most brought up question at their shareholder meetings.
Okay.
Every time.
The shareholder pressure. Okay.
At the quarterly shareholder meetings, they always kind of seem to be bugging them. What are you doing with your own? Like, because for them, whatever these old fogey shareholder people are, they're always sitting there like, in their mind, what they understand is the buzz is subscription service. Now, they know Nintendo has subscription service. I would bet you dollars they have no idea how it works or operates or what's offered. But what they are constantly asking is, what are you doing to get better subscription numbers? How are you boosting? Because for them, all they care about right now, all the shareholders care about, are you increasing the amount of subscription service numbers? Because that's where all the money is right now, as far as, that's the buzzword in the industry and whatever. So I actually do think Nintendo might make some maneuvers, because this is what their shareholders are constantly bugging them about. So if Sony comes out next month, I mean, it would also be better, because I think the shareholder meetings is in like a week for Nintendo, unfortunately. So we don't know what Sony's doing yet. But, if Sony comes out very soon with a wham bam, holy cow, look at this, Game Pass equivalent on Sony, and if they start getting their numbers, people start subscribing to Sony Spartacus en masse. I think that's actually going to put pressure on Nintendo through, not because of what the competition's doing, but because their shareholders are going to be like, what are you doing to increase? What are you doing? Well, what are you doing? Well, how are you competing? How are you making sure your subscription numbers are better than their subscription numbers? And that's going to pressure Nintendo to do something about it. So, and I think a lot of people already kind of like really side-eyed at that $50 a year.
Oh,
Not
for
even,
expansion
you know,
pack, and it's only, as you said, it's
no,
only a yearly option, not even a monthly
no
path
monthly
for it.
option, nothing, just $50 a year.
So even if Nintendo ends up getting pressured to do a subscription, I still think they're going to have the weirdest subscription service possible compared to Microsoft and whatever Sony's thing. Because I don't think they're going to give you every new game in a year. I think there's going to be a limit. I think it's going to be a pick. You get to pick like X amount of games from a year in the current year that you get to play, like maybe two. So like watch it be like $100 a year, and you get to pick two games from the year. Or it's probably going to be more than $100, but it's going to be like divided by 12, whatever it's going to be. And it's going to be, you get two games, you get to pick two games from the year, and the others will not be included. And then not only that, it's going to be a vaulted window of older games, like for Switch. Like if it's on Switch, you don't even get access to the previous Switch library. You just get time-gated stuff. That's what the Vault's been prepping this for. They're literally going to rotate their games in and out of this damn thing in Windows. They're absolutely going to do that until something otherwise tells them like that it fails a bit, like abysmally, or the shareholders like, you could be making more money if you put everything on it. Please put everything on it. Like they put enough pressure, but they're gonna do something weird like that at first. I just imagine they are, where it's not everything. It's just some of your catalog, and it's very restrictive because they know their consumers buy most of the games every year. So like, why would we give you them for cheaper? Wait, what?
Oh, I think with Nintendo, what it'll be is they'll be like, okay, fine, Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, maybe some GameCube games, and we'll give you a
they'll put Switch games on there.
No, actually, I don't.
Okay.
I actually think they'll avoid that as long as they can, and then they'll do like okay, it's going to cost $120 a year, right? And they'll give you like 2 eShop tickets for a selected, curated. You can pick 2 first-party games that you can download for the Switch. And as long as you have a subscription, you can play those games, but then you
stop subscribing, you lose them.
You lose
access to
games.
them. I think what's also most likely to start out with the current Switch Online, the expansion pack, I think in the coming year, they're going to let you have the option to pick which DLC expansion content you want. Like, I bet at least 2 games come out with it. And if they don't give you both, they might let you pick which one you want. And that might be the testing ground for, it's going to be a selection. It's going to be like a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B for your subscription. You don't get everything. You can just pick a certain amount from each kind of like category, and that's like your package. You put it together, and they're going to brand it as like, oh, it's so flexible and good for you. And it's like, maybe it could be. I don't know.
I think the subscription model is kind of like, it's already happened. It's already happening. It's already kind of becoming like, the subscription model might just become the standard. For,
oh my god, what if they gated entire games behind it?
It could happen. It could easily happen.
You can't. It's not about online. Like, you can't even buy this game if you don't have Switch Online. You don't have to.
Well, I've said something like PSO would be a great
you brought that up
part
before.
of the NSO service. Like, I think that would be that would be gated technically.
Well, let me clarify. I'm not talking about like a Mario 30. I'm talking about like a pretty decent sized game. I'm talking about like, they want, like, let's say a new F-Zero comes out, but it's like not quite triple. It's like, it's basically not like a successor to GX. It's awesome, but like, it's probably not worth $60. But they're like, you can't even get it unless you're behind this thing. And like, I'm not even talking about you need to be a subscriber to just get access to it. I think the option to even buy it. I think I'm going greedy here. I'm going greed Nintendo. It's like, you can't even buy it unless so if you got to pay to be a member, then you could buy the damn thing.
Can you imagine if they have a special garden, of the eShop? This part of the eShop is locked behind NSO subscription only people.
All right. Okay. I don't really think they're gonna do that. That just is like, this is like the extreme. Someone's gonna propose that to them, and they're gonna be like, they will consider it, and then someone's like, yeah, that's nah. Let's just like
That'll
let's
go
not
over
do that.
poorly.
Yeah, that would cause so much backlash. But to be realistic, you're right. Like, I think they will add more experiences to the expansion pack gate, like paywall,
Yeah, and I think
like a Mario 35 type thing, or Tetris
yeah,
99 or Pac-Man 99. There's definitely more of those to come. But as you said, it's interesting because you think it's going to be more catalog stuff will be added, where I think
yeah.
they might add
I
old
think they're
Switch
gonna.
games to it at some
I
point,
think they're gonna
but
be
not
dragging.
new.
I don't know. I feel like they're gonna be. They'll be like cartoonishly like a dragging their heels or their hands like clawing to the ground before they are told they have to offer a subscription
Yeah,
model
because
for
they're
Switch
about
games.
maximizing. They want full price. That's why they don't do discounts. They take forever to do discounts. The Switch hardware still doesn't have a price cut. None of the three
Yeah,
versions have had a price cut
yeah,
officially.
exactly.
It's like this is their MO. So this is why subscription flies in the face of the Game Pass model flies in the face of what they're trying to do, which is why I think whatever they do, if they ever try and expand it to be more comprehensive, it's going to
Mhm.
be the most
I
expensive,
think
like
yeah.
money grabbing thing possible of any of the ones out there.
Between the two things we talked about, I think like if Spartacus gets revealed very soon and it is as good as Game Pass, I think that forces Nintendo's hand to change sooner rather than say, okay, let's say Sony buys Take Two in a couple months. I don't think that changes much of Nintendo's plans or whatever. But if Spartacus becomes it becomes a real boy and is as good a value as Game Pass and is coming out very, very, very quickly per se, I think that will really start to force Nintendo's hands uh, more. Like they're not going to obviously knee jerk react to it, but like I think if man, I'm just thinking of the value of Game Pass with combined with Sony's first party library, that is going to put, I think, immense pressure on Nintendo to like do something. And because right now it's not that I don't like the NSO or the games offered on it. I absolutely love them. They're all-time classics, but the value, even for the price being as low as it is, it's not anywhere close to like what the offerings are on Microsoft right now. And God help Nintendo if Sony matches that value.
Yeah,
So
I think it's
because
going to
then
definitely put pressure, a lot of pressure.
yeah, because then at that point it's going to be like, yeah, okay, Nintendo, you can sit there and be, yeah, be the be the Warner home video or be the home video market that refuses, to go, be Blockbuster, while Netflix is gobbling up, the competition, like, be that way. I don't know, like I feel
Yeah,
like I feel like the Switch is popular as big as it is, like Switch is for a lot of people is a machine that does one of four things: plays Mario Kart, plays Animal Crossing, Smash Brothers, and Pokemon. Like it's mostly the machine that does that. And that's not to say they haven't had. I'm not saying other games aren't successful on the Switch, but I'm just saying that like, man, those games I listed, they're in the tens of millions of copies sold. Like a lot of people really, it happened, and it happened with the Wii. It happened with the in kind of sort of with the Wii U, but a lot of people just bought the Wii and got Wii Sports and Mario Kart alone. That was it. But if I think there's a market out there for those people, those really casual types of lapsed gamers who are like, hey, if Nintendo had a service on the Switch that was as big a value as Game Pass, I think a lot of people who normally don't buy other video games, the people who just bought a Switch for Mario Kart and maybe one other thing, might go, you know what? I'll subscribe to that, and then they're going to start checking out and playing the other games, and it becomes a Trojan horse to creating fans for all of Nintendo's other games and IPs. So some of their lesser hugely successful games all of a sudden start getting way more people aware of it. Because most people are like, okay, I'm sorry, but like you go to any game store right now, if any exist, and you look at a Switch and you're going to sit there and be like, okay, Mario Kart in Mario, I know what those are. I know what Pokemon is. I don't know how many people are going to be like, this ARMS game, $60 seems like a good deal. Like, and that's not to say ARMS is bad. It's just like it's a new IP. it's a whole new thing. But if it was on a subscription service like a Game Pass thing, like you said, like it was an older Switch title that you could download if you're subscribed, I think way more people start downloading. You know what? I don't know if I wanted to spend $50-$60 on this, but you know what? If it's part of the subscription service, I'll definitely give it a whirl.
I mean, yeah, that's what that's exactly what Game Pass has been accomplishing. People are trying out
and
games that people would say otherwise no to for a buy, or like, exactly. I will play this, and it's like giving games a chance. I think it's a way forward for games that used to be like succeed or fail based on sales. I think there is another path now because of the subscriptions.
Yeah, the problem is just really just getting Nintendo to understand that look, you like with regards to, like, frankly, with ARMS or even more beloved games that are more niche, just being like, look, you've reached the limit of people who are willing to spend full dollar for ARMS, for Fire Emblem, for Xenoblade. You've reached the limit of people willing to spend $60 on that. But if you have the subscription model and people do download it and play it and become fans of it, now they're willing to spend $60 for ARMS 2, for the next Fire Emblem, for the next whatever, right? I think that's the value of having a subscription model that offers current games to that system, is that, it's your Trojan horse. All of a sudden now it's like, I saw Kirby, but I was never interested in Kirby. But now that I can download Star Allies, now I'm a big fan of Star Allies, I'm going to definitely pick up Forgotten Land. Whereas that person would have just continued life forgetting about Kirby's existence because they were never really sure if they wanted to bite the bullet on a $60 purchase, for that. But
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Again, as you said, like, the hesitancy from Nintendo is that they seem to see some of their titles that end up like swinging for the fences and just go huge, like Super Mario Party, just doing huge amounts of numbers, best-selling entry.
And the problem is,
I think they feel like any of their games are at any moment are possible to have the possibility of doing that on Switch because of like the install base of that system and the momentum it has. So I see even taking an older game, like, I'm for this, Simmons. I actually think this is a good idea. I could see the counter argument from Nintendo is that people are just going to start thinking, I just have to wait for a game. I don't need to buy it anymore. I'm going to wait for it. And Nintendo hates that. Nintendo really does not like people passing on opportunities. Like, they want, when they're doing something new, they want it in the moment. That's like they do that. Like, I think that's why they started doing the vault thing. That's why I think it's going to be a rotational thing to keep you guessing, because I don't think they want you to have expectations like that. I think they're absolutely going to like tweak that, because if it becomes too predictable, they're going to say we're losing sales because people now know how to play the game. The system, the subscription
right.
skips.
But I think that will be their mentality, but I think it's the wrong mentality.
No, I do too. I think it's the wrong mentality to have too, but convincing Nintendo that's the wrong mentality, I think, is going to take a little bit more time than we're thinking. So I think out of the gates, if they ever do something like that, it's going to be probably, I believe personally, it's going to be more like what I described than even just like offering any game before 2019 will just be on there. Like, it'll be a 2-year delay. I don't even think they'll do that. I think they're going to make it a rotation. And it changes every few months.
Indulge me on this, but here's why. Indulge me a little bit. This is why you want people to become fans of things. What they don't get is that if people start valuing your brand and IP more than just, because the idea is like people will devalue it if they can just get it for free if they wait long enough.
Yeah.
But let's say like you believe in your product and you become a mega fan. And then you start becoming like me, where it's like, I don't want just any version. I want a special edition version. In fact, I want a special edition version from other countries.
This is Atlas. This is literally Atlas. So, this is Atlas and NIS. And
maybe I want one of those for to keep sealed up. And maybe I just like the company, the developer so much, I'll get a special edition, for that one. And then, oh, you know what? I need a Japanese, special edition of Xenoblade as well. So it's like, that's what happens when people become really big fans of a franchise.
That's
and here's the thing.
True.
People know me as kind of like the monolith guy. I did not like that company 15 years ago. I thought they sucked. I thought Xenosaga was everything wrong with video gaming. It's just cutscenes. There's like hardly any gameplay, and stiff and boring when it does happen. But now they're my favorite developer.
Well,
You know,
there's
that's because we took a chance importing,
yeah.
Xenoblade 1 on the UK version when that came out. But it's like, I guarantee you there's a lot of people like me who are like, I'm not really into that genre or that game, but hey, you know what? People like it. I'll download it. I'll try it.
I think that's the more important point to take away is like there are fans who are in waiting that like just need that lower barrier to entry. This is why I like Fire Emblem Heroes so much on phone. Why I championed that game is because it was a good gateway, free to play. Try out the concept of Fire Emblem. If you hate gacha shit, if you hate microtransactions, you know what? You can buy a whole Fire Emblem game for a fixed price, and it's better. It's a better experience than that phone game. It's not updated frequently like it. So if you want that, that's a little bit different story, but if you like it for its gameplay, there's a like it won over people. So I agree with you with like for that for sure. I just think the issue with like buying special edition stuff like that's definitely true, but like that's like that's like that is a large a group with a large wallet, the whales so to speak, but like those aren't enough to sustain. But like but to your point though, I do think that this is like the bigger picture here is like there is a benefit to getting a lower barrier of entry for some of the games that people would otherwise never try out, never because they don't want to pay full price for that.
Well,
and that's what we got. That's what Nintendo needs to hopefully realize at some point that benefit is going to outweigh whatever their historical thing of like, no, we want as many people to buy our games at maximum price possible. It's like, there is another way, and Microsoft's starting to show you. And if Sony does it, Sony starts showing it's like these other companies are showing you the way. You used to be the one that led, like you're about disrupting the industry and stuff. Like you actually aren't doing that right now. Right now, Microsoft is doing that with Game Pass. Like that is, and they're just taking it from other mediums that already did this first. They're just like, they took the chance. And what's funny is they got criticized. Well, I'm one of the most vocal critics of their stumbling that they did at the Xbox One. The fall from 360 to Xbox One was one of their biggest misfires. I will go back and say now, they had some good ideas. It was just like execution and messaging was terrible. And they were also way too soon at the time. But someone has to start somewhere. And I think we're starting to see that pay off. Just like at some point in the future, when we look back at Google Stadia and Luna and stuff, like, man, those are big misfires. Someone had to start somewhere. But like in like another 10, 15, 20 years, cloud gaming is probably going to be everywhere and pretty standard. And we're going to be like, well, someone had to try. So Nintendo, I feel weirded out sometimes when Nintendo is so anti like improving online, anti trying out like these more robust subscription services because they see these like they're all about technological disruption, like innovative like gameplay experiences because they're about the games. But like I feel sometimes when it comes to the business model, like they've been in like I feel like they've been in an echo chamber for too long about what works with them because like it has been working for 5 years for them with Switch.
And Miyamoto brought it up, I think, at the last investors meeting where he's like, well, Nintendo's very big on lateral thinking, as they call it, lateral technology, which he said was kind of championed by Gunpei Yokoi, where, it's like, why aren't you technologically savvy? He's like, because we like to find lateral uses. We like to find new uses with existing technology rather than try to be cutting edge and lose so much money and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you know what? Honestly, if Nintendo wants to sit here and ride out the Switch and its dinosaur chipset, for another 4+ years, I think having a sort of Game Pass like subscription for the Switch would be more beneficial to keeping this ancient hardware going. I think it is part of lateral
exactly,
thinking that they talk about.
That's such a good point because imagine how many new people, because even at 100+ million units sold, there's still how many people in the damn world and how many people can afford and want to play games. There's still a lot out there technically. There's still a much higher upper threshold. Can you imagine to convince new people to jump in at this point? If you had, it's $200 for like the base Switch, or sorry, a Switch, or $300 for a base. What is it now? I forget. What's the Switch? Not OLED. The base Switch still $299.99, right?
Yeah.
$299 because they have a price cut. So
the same as a Series S.
Yeah. But if you're going to still ask for $300, imagine if it came with like 1 year subscription to Nintendo Game Pass or whatever, which means in collection to all existing games. Like new games are not going to be on it, but like you have access to the entire Switch library. As a new person jumping in, that's a pretty good value, isn't it? Like I bought a
Yeah.
Switch, and now I have every Switch game out on it right now at my
You know,
fingertips.
and the crazy thing is that the Switch actually has a lower attach rate than the Wii does or the DS did. Just sort of as a sort of a side note here, in that, like, well, the games are selling like hotcakes. Like, the idea is that, like, they don't. I'm like, they are selling like hotcakes. They really are. However, you know, on a attach rate system to ratio, more people who owned a Wii bought more games for it on average. On average, you had more, you know, people bought 9+ games for their system on average. And right now the average for the Switch is hovering somewhere around 6.
Yeah, so
Um
it's lower.
so it's a little extra.
You already made the point though with like your four things. Like a lot of people just buy the system for one of like a handful of games. Like that's why Mario Kart 8 Deluxe keeps charting, and why Skyward, or it's not Skyward Sword, Skyward Sword Wishes. Breath of the Wild keeps charting as well, pretty much, you know, in the top 20, because it's the games people want, and those two are like enough for a lot of people. Like those 3 or 4 game experiences are enough for a lot of people. So you gotta
And
like,
the
how do you
other
get
thing
those
about
people
the
to
other
get
thing
more
about
invested? Yeah.
well, here's the other thing about Game Pass is that sometimes they offer sales for games on Game Pass. I didn't
Yeah.
know this. And
I
I'm like, what's the point? And they're like, well, you know,
place
if you ever just cancel your subscription, you know, they offered a sale at a
and you
certain time.
bought it,
Like,
you keep it.
okay, now you own it. Now
Yeah.
it's no longer a part of the game. Now it'll just stay in your library
PlayStation Plus does
forever.
that right now. Even for Spartacus, that's one of the PlayStation Plus benefits, is you can get sales on certain games, and that sale price is only available on there. Like, absolutely, Nintendo Switch. I know there's the gold coin system with Nintendo, that's how they reward you. You buy games, you get currency, and it lets you buy it. But like,
It's how I
it's such a
acquired most of my fighters.
but it's also such a convoluted system. I feel like it would just be simpler if they like switched over to, like, if you're an expansion pack subscriber, like this year, like for this month, you can buy Bayonetta 2, or you could buy like Animal Crossing New Horizons for like $49.99 or $39.99 this month, and you keep
Yeah.
it. You get to keep it, like something. Or you can buy Super Mario Odyssey $39.99. Like, now they do have sales every now and then, but like this
And I don't
yeah.
know how many I don't know how much, you know, if you're a Game Pass subscriber, I don't know how many people actually do that, or like they actually go
Yeah,
in
I'm not sure how
and buy a
strong.
game. I don't know how strong the sales are, but they're there. It's an offer there. Which I was surprised by. For me, it usually is like, I play a game on the cloud, and I'm like, do I like this game? Yeah, I like this game. And then I'll just literally click, you know, a little game tab and be like, download the game, so I don't have to play it on the cloud anymore. And that's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
You know, amazing convenience thing. And I Switch could do that. There's nothing stopping Switch from having the same exact kind of feature where it's
Well,
like, okay, play a whole bunch of games on the cloud. Do you like the game? Yes, download it to my system.
Going back to the very beginning here, they just need a partner who can help them with their online infrastructure improve, so that like actually becomes a convenient thing to do, and not a headache and nightmare on their
Yeah.
current system. But well, we'll see what the future holds for Nintendo as we move
I
further
feel
into
like
the year here.
February is going. I
Yeah.
feel like February is going to be very, very interesting. Almost a fear I have is that, like, Nintendo will have a direct next month, which I want. Don't get me wrong, but like, they'll have a direct and they'll have a bunch of games people are going to be super psyched about, and this whole conversation is going to be completely forgotten, even by myself.
Yeah,
Um,
because
so,
that's what they do.
because that's kind of what, yeah, that's kind of what they do. Is just kind of like, you know, everyone's kind of like, what's Nintendo going to do? Well, what's Nintendo going to do? New Kirby trailer. Oh my god, I love Nintendo.
Yeah, that's all they're gonna do, is like they're just gonna show off like something from one of the big upcoming games, and we're distracted enough that we kind of forget about this to you know, keep putting pressure. But you know what? As you said earlier, I think what really is going to be is like when other companies start, more and more of them start doing this, the investors keep putting this pressure on Nintendo. Eventually, I think they're going to have to give something to them at some point. So like, I think the wheels have been set in motion that cannot be undone. Like, you know, the Lord of the Rings quote from Gandalf in the movies, like, beasts are now in motion, like things cannot be undone. Like, I think we're on this path, and whether Nintendo likes it or not, at some point within the next 5 years, I think they're gonna have to look at their business model and make some alterations, because
I think
they're gonna have to keep up.
I think Spartacus could be a big disruptor for specifically Nintendo. Yeah, because when all your competition is offering a subscription based, you know, thing for new games, not 25-year-old games, but for new games, I think that's when things start becoming a little more, people start like turning their head a little bit more, going like, well, why aren't you offering this? Like, I know Nintendo marches to the beat of their own drum, but they still make video games the same as everyone else. It's not like Nintendo doesn't make video games, at all. So, yeah, I think it'll be very, very interesting. Depending, I think a lot of it depends on, Spartacus is real, and then of going back to the other things, like, does Sony start making any big acquisitions? Because again, the more acquisitions that happen, the less games there are, period, to show up on Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a developer or publisher that pretty much has like no presence on Nintendo, getting acquired by someone else means that, like, well, now they're never going to show up on your system. Now that bridge can never be repaired. So at one point, you kind of wonder, like, Nintendo's shown it can weather a storm on its own with its own internal stuff, but as this whole industry moves further and further and further into a digital and subscription based model, I hope Nintendo doesn't wait too long, to catch up, because quite frankly, they have such a great library. Their library is so, effing good, and they know it, and that's probably why. And again, that's why they want to still charge you $60 for everything. But it's still so so dang good that it's like, I want Nintendo to do this just for me, just to have that, just so I can have access to Nintendo's library as easily and conveniently as what the competition's doing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little greedy and self-interest maybe, but like, hey, it's Nintendo, man. I would love to be able to just boot up Golden Sun, 1 and 2, just whenever I wanted. I would love to be able, to say boot up Pikmin 1 and 2, F-Zero GX on the GameCube, and just go online and say, hey, who wants to play online on F-Zero GX right now? I'd love, just, hey, let's do it. Awesome, great. So yeah, I kind of really would like this. I would really like Nintendo to jump on this. If Sony's jumping on it too, I'd really like Nintendo to jump on it too as well.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Matt, for joining me and talking about the impact of this landmark acquisition from Microsoft and what Nintendo might need to do about it. And as you said, probably very likely next month we might be hearing some more about Nintendo's plans. Probably not about this, but I imagine we'll hear.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think next month I'll just be like, here's a direct, here's a bunch of games that you all.
Here's our answer to your Spartacus: is we got more games, and you're gonna buy them at full price.
We got the games you really want. They're $60 each.
Yep.
Good night.
Yep, for sure. And thank you to our we have some shout outs for the month of January. These are our big $200 and up patrons. Shout outs to El Thanis, Greg the Dark Knight Kettering, Caleb Togi Crawford, and Nick. Shout out. Thank you so much. And Simmons, for our listeners and our viewers, if they want to follow you and check some more of your stuff out, where can they find that?
I run sort of the archival channel for YoVideoGames at youtube.com/YoVideoGames. And I personally Twitch at twitch.tv/AssistMeDoom. I'm a bit of a variety streamer. I do like my RPGs and my platformers a lot. Every Monday, I play specifically Monolith Soft games. So if you ever want to like come and talk Monolith Soft, which is it is a first party Nintendo developer that they own, which we didn't even bring that up. That's one of the few times Nintendo ever bought anyone, was Monolith Soft. But yeah, I cover all their products on Monday nights. So yeah, you can hit me up on twitch.tv/AssistMeDoom.
Nice. And until next time, everybody, may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.